where does the Trump administration go from here? Let's talk about it with tonight's Foreign Policy Power Panel. Fox News contributor, former CIA station chief Daniel Hoffman, Fox News chief intelligence correspondent Catherine Herridge, and former national security advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney, John Hanna. Welcome to all of you. Good to have you with us tonight. John, I want to start with you because you know over the last few days there's been a lot of criticism saying numerous previous administrations have been too cozy and too easy on the Saudis. This is not something especially new. How do you respond?
Well, I think that's right. I think every single one of President Trump's predecessors has had to try and walk this fine line between dealing with the regime whose values we obviously despise and we find medieval. At the same time, that U.S.-Saudi relationship has been a cornerstone of our ability to protect and advance our vital economic and security interests of the American people in the Middle East. And that remains the case today, and that's the challenge that the president confronts.
And Catherine, what do you make of the timing of this release? It's early overnight hours there. Do you feel like there was something that forced their hands?
Well, it may have been. I'm always sort of trained to look at the timeline and the sequence of events, and what now seems to be a very prescient report by the New York Times, maybe even a trial balloon, about this Deputy Security Chief Ahmed al-Asiri. They had multiple sources saying yesterday that he had been tasked to pick up Khashoggi, bring him back to Saudi Arabia for an interrogation, and the two options that were floated were that he either misunderstood the instructions or he overstepped his bounds of authority, and then we find today that it was blamed on a brawl at the consulate. I feel that the announcement may have been forced or precipitated in some way by other intelligence that the Saudis could not control, but it did have that feel of kind of a rollout. It had a lot of loose ends sort of tied up, the arrests, the demotions, and then this very simplistic explanation of what they say happened at the consulate.
Okay, so we know we're told 18 people in custody or arrested and 5 major top officials have been fired. Dan, can you tell us about a couple of these, Saeed al-Qahtani and Ahmad al-Asiri?
So Saud al-Qahtani was appointed as a senior advisor to Mohammed bin Salman in December 2015. He's been known informally as the media enforcer, the guy who tracks all the potential dissent inside the kingdom and exercises a lot of control over the journalists and what they say and what they're not allowed to say. It's pretty significant that he was fired from his position. The other individual was fired. Ahmed al-Asiri is the deputy head of the Saudi General Intelligence Presidency, their intelligence service. Also, there have been some reports that he was involved in dispatching the team of 15 Saudis on that Gulfstream aircraft to Istanbul. And so, again, that's also a significant move. I would just highlight Secretary Pompeo was clearly involved in a lot of back-channel diplomacy and was making public statements for public consumption, but doing a lot of work behind the scenes that I think is bearing some fruit.
Yeah, and he seemed to suggest that, hey, you might as well come clean with us because we're going to find out these facts. I want to play something from the president. He's been traveling today, but this is something that came from one of the pool reporters who yelled a question to him about this report of the fistfight, and that's what led to the death. Do you consider it credible? Here's what he said in that exchange.
I do. I mean, it's early. We haven't finished our review or investigation, but I think it's a very important first step, and it happened sooner than people thought it would happen.
And John, he's getting jumped all over tonight, saying that this president has been complicit in some way in what happened, and that for him to say he does accept this as credible, but says it's a first step, he's taken a lot of heat tonight.
Yeah, and I think some of the criticism is warranted. I think the president's right. This is an important first step. These two guys that have been dismissed are extremely important. These are people as close to the Crown Prince as you can get without actually implicating Mohammed bin Salman himself. On the other hand, I do think the president's got to be, he doesn't need to be seen as running interference for the Saudis. He needs to be standing up for American values, American interests, demanding credible answers. He shouldn't be vouching for the Saudi investigation. He ought to be demanding answers, holding the Saudis accountable, while at the same time explaining to the American people this is a relationship with a nation that's been the cornerstone of stability in the Middle Middle East and the American-led order in the Middle East, and we have to find a way to preserve it and continue to work with them.
Yeah, and there's been bipartisan backlash to this whole thing today. Kristen mentioned the tweet from Senator Graham saying, I just find this completely unbelievable, this explanation. Senator Coons across the aisle, a Democrat, saying this, while Saudi Arabia has long been an important U.S. partner in the Middle East, our shared interests should not require us to abandon our values, including a commitment to free press, human rights, and the rule of law. He says he also, Catherine, does not find this credible.
Well, I think one of the things we're seeing illustrated tonight is this clear divide between how the Saudis think their citizens consume information and understand intelligence and what we have as an expectation here in the United States. I think what we all understand, and it may even be likely that Secretary Pompeo really impressed this on the Saudis, is that you can't keep the lid on this. Eventually, the information is going to come out. There are going to be congressional hearings. We have a much more transparent system. Whereas the statement from the Saudis tonight really speaks to this kind of repressive, limiting the facts, offering a very simplistic explanation, which may be okay for domestic consumption, but it's certainly not going to sit well with people here in the United States.
Yeah, I mean, Daniel, where do we go from here? I mean, the logistics of where there'll be trials, will there be prosecutions, and what about his body? A lot of big questions.
Yeah, I think this is just the beginning, frankly. I worked for an ambassador many years ago who used to say that diplomatic incidents, or in this case a murder, isn't like fine wine. It's going to get better with age. You want to grab a hold of the facts with some alacrity and accuracy and get it out quickly so you own the dialogue. And Saudis have failed really to do that. We still don't know what the orders were to those 15 Saudis. We don't know who gave them. And we don't know whether they carried out the orders as they were intended. We have lots of intelligence collection. I'm quite convinced on this. And I think, as Catherine said, the challenge, we've got a little bit of a clash of civilization here where we've got an open and transparent system, and the Saudis are stuck in that. We are going to have, I would think, hearings, testimony in the Congress, maybe some closed testimony on the Hill with Senate and House Intelligence Committees, but open testimony as well, and a lot of pressure on our foreign policy. Yeah. And that's the challenge for Saudi Arabia, and I think the impetus for them to share more publicly.
Yeah, and there's still this question of these recordings the Turks say that they have, but have not yet been shared with the U.S., apparently. Daniel, Catherine, John, thank you all very much.